I don't even know what episode we're on today, but another episode of A Podcast with your host, Stephen Max. Today we have Dan Yorsh at Aryval, spelled a little bit differently than I would write it out, but I might even have spelled it wrong myself. But it's a really cool thing we're going to talk today with Dan about. And Dan, thank you for making time to be on the episode today. I know we have a few mutual connections that bring us together, and we recently caught up, and I was so pumped to hear about where you're at today and what you're doing. And we're excited to have you on the podcast today. So thanks for making time.
Yeah, stoked to be here. So looking forward to it.
Awesome. And Dan, can you give us a little insight about what Aryval is all about? And if you want to touch on a little bit of your journey about like getting into this part of entrepreneurship for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So myself and the two other co-founders worked in the ed tech or education space, more specifically, not ed tech, really helping out schools fill that top of funnel, helping them with branding. We worked at a specific company. During that time, having exposure to a number of schools, we started to discover that there's a problem in the industry. And, one day we were hanging out, the three of us, and we were still employed. And we're like, what if there's something that can actually solve the problem that we see currently in the market? Because we didn't create the problem. We found that problem. And we're like, yeah, let's try to see what happens. And we decided to develop Aryval. And we decided to leave our day jobs that paid us well. And, especially Jonathan and Wes, they have families, they have kids. So it's a bigger risk. And we decided to make the leap and build our own dream instead of somebody else's, and kind of went both feet in, and developed Aryval. What is Aryval? So the problem, currently we work with K-12 schools that are private and independent. So these are schools that charge upwards of, from $30,000 to upwards of $100,000 a year to attend grade 5 or grade 6. And really the challenge there is that the first point of contact with these families when they experience the campus is with a in-person tour or a private tour, or an open house. But families would fill out a form and then they would get crossed off a spreadsheet, and that's kind of where it stopped. So there was really no data of how these families found out about the school or found out about the event, if they've actually showed up, what was their experience at these events, and then how did they kind of flow through the admissions funnel of actually applying and then potentially enrolling to give you an overall yield on which events you should do and shouldn't do. We work with a number of schools. Some have 5 events. Some schools have over 100 events. So it's super valuable to see, should you add more events or should you reduce events?
Awesome. That was a great insight. Thanks for sharing that. And no kidding about risk, especially if there are kind of more of like the family dynamic involved with the other 2 folks. I know we got chatting with them recently too. They're like, good on you guys. And how quick did this thing get rolling then when you did take that jump? Because there's probably a limited time of that risk, so to say, to extend for you guys to really have success within the space. Yeah. Or what did that look like?
Yeah, we kind of talked about it in the fall over a couple of beers, and then we're like, okay, well, let's just work on this in the off hours, because we were still very committed to our current employer and to our current book of business that we managed, which were schools. So we worked in the off hours together throughout. And then there was one of our investors who wasn't an investor at the time. I reached out to him to be a potential mentor through this journey. As he's done it over and over. He's very successful, and just a great person all around. So we met with him initially one day on the weekend, and we went through the whole song and dance of like, this is what we want to do. This is the workflow, and this is how we're going to build this platform. And he's like, okay, cool, but like, you're not a business. And we were like shocked, and we were like, what do you mean we're not a business? He's like, do you have your USA? So, your universal shareholder agreement. What is your hiring contracts? What are your, freelancer contracts, or anybody that's kind of touching the product? What do your NDAs look like? and a smorgasbord of other things. And, we're like, and then he said, how about this? Let's meet in 3 weeks. And then I could kind of assist you guys and potentially be a mentor. So over those 3 weeks, we started reading books, and I'm not one to, people know this, I'm not one to read books, but, I picked up a few books and really dove into it. Wes and Jonathan also kind of dove into it. And over 3 weeks, we really like got everything and all our ducks in a row. And I remember, this was already kind of wintertime, and we went to his house. He invited us over for a glass of wine, and we sat there and presented on his TV. And we went through the whole thing. He's like, here's our commission structure. Here's how, we're going to, what our go-to-market strategy is, which customers are we going after, and because we worked in the space already, we had to pick customers that weren't working with our existing company. But at the end of the day, our existing company was a consultancy company. So they offered services where we're more of a product. So we weren't stepping on any toes. We were actually complementing what they were doing. But anyways, we kind of put the go-to-market strategy together and presented it to him. And we put this great presentation. We still have it. And then at the end of the conversation was like, okay, cool. I'm good. I'm going to invest in the company. And like, we were blown away. I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this or not, but we were blown away. And basically, walking out of his house, I'm like, guys, he might have cameras. Let's like keep it to ourselves. And then Wes and I were carpooling, and Jonathan was driving his own car because he lives a little bit farther away from Wes and I. And we're on Bluetooth, and we're like, holy crap, we're going to be quitting our day jobs. Like, this is actually happening. Like, holy smokes. And that's that, he said after that meeting, guys, and he's a really big whiteboard guy. So like, he kind of gave us so much insight, and just like, he's so smart. And he's like, I thought you guys might have just going to pack up your tents and just keep working at your day jobs because you guys were compensated well and you guys were pretty happy in your lives. But, you guys really took it to the next level. And I'm investing in you guys. I really believe in what you're doing. And he's still along for the journey.
That's awesome to hear. And I know that we're not using names on this one, so don't do that at this stage. But I am curious in general, how did this person come into your life, or how do you know them?
It was like a mutual contact that we kind of crossed paths, and I reached out to the person that I knew that knew this person. And they set up a meeting. This person was super busy, so they kind of canceled on me, I think 2 times. And it wasn't like in bad faith. It's just like, this person's traveling most of the week. I text him. I was texting him last week, and he's like, yeah, I'm out here. And he's like, what should I try to eat? And so this person's always on the go, especially during Q4 in the type of business that he's in. But yeah, it just worked out. And because we have this person, and I'm more than happy to share kind of the other investors that we've brought on since then, but he for sure kind of opened that door for us. And you know what, whatever happens with Aryval, and, the day that, if we get acquired, or, whatever the case may be, or keep this thing going, which is kind of the goal for the whole team, is to keep doing this for a long time, because we like working at Aryval. But that day that I can deliver that check to his house and be like, thank you for everything that you've done. And it's not just the money, it's the knowledge, the mentorship, doing the documentation for safes and all that. He's a very transparent person. So I owe a lot to that person.
That is so cool to hear. And the only reason I'm not even far how far we'll dig into this one, but I love hearing about unique situations of like meeting folks that are investors out there. I think a lot of time these folks are actually right in front of our eyes, in a very strange way of saying that, but it's not the first time that I've kind of heard of a situation similar to this, where it's like a known someone like in a group or community, and maybe known for doing this, maybe not, but are in business and kind of have those the ability and the know-how to help manage these things. I just think it's so unique in the entrepreneur space when I hear about these stories like that, where it's not one big build up or pitch night. It's things like this, and they're truly investing, to your point too, in you as a person. Yes, okay, it has to be a business and turn hopefully profit down the road and such, but
Yeah.
it's truly finding good people to partner with that have these ideas and the drive to do it. So thanks for sharing that part of it. I hope that someone takes something really positive away from that. If
Yeah, and
they
just like reach out to people. Like, I mean, the other two investors that we have, like, it was a LinkedIn message that turned into getting one of the top inventors in the industry to invest in our company. And it really all started from just a DM on LinkedIn. And you sell yourself, you sell your team, you sell your product, and then you sell your company. And
yeah,
good things can happen. It's just like, who cares if they say no? At least you reached out, or at least get their feedback of, what they think of what you're, what direction you're going, and if you're going in the right direction as well.
totally. And I just to add to this too, I mean, sometimes if it's, yeah, at least if you're reaching out in that position too, you're starting that kind of energy flow out in the universe, we'll say. Because if it's not maybe that person, if they're in that space and they know someone that would want to invest in something like this, or maybe they have more of a skill set, it's good to not hold back and get out
That's how we
there.
got our third investor. Yeah.
That it is,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like, we got our second one, and then he was just like, hey, like, I have a buddy that's always wanted to invest in this space.
Yeah.
He got acquired by Blackbaud, which is the biggest company in our industry. It's a publicly traded company. And we always said that, once something good came by, we would partner up. Like, would you be open to have a 15-minute call with him? And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? And I had a phone call with him, just a great guy with great energy. And he's like, hey, I'm going to go to Switzerland for 3 weeks with my family and hike. And he's like, one day you'll have that opportunity to do it once, your company does well, but let me think about it for 3 weeks. And then, yeah, I mean, a couple weeks later we reconnected, and he's like, both of them said they want to invest at the same time.
Awesome. Now, how much of decision making or like conversations in your business journey have been intuitive or a gut feel for you when making them?
Yeah, I would say, like, Wes, one of my business partners and co-founders at Aryval, will always say that I have a really good gut feeling, even when we worked at our previous employer. For sure, a large amount of it is on gut,
Yeah.
but my gut can also be wrong, right? Depends what I ate that day. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
but a lot of it, it's like, when we approached investing for our company, or finding investors, it was, we have friends that are very well off that can invest and give us money. And
Right.
some startups do go down that path. It's like, I just need the money, I just need the fuel to get me to that next level. And then in my Series A, or in another pre-seed round or a seed extension, I will get the right strategic investors. From the jump, we wanted the strategic investors. We didn't want our aunt's money. Not that my aunt has money, but
Yeah. Yeah.
we never wanted that approach. So we met with a lot of people. I literally had one investor. I had a conversation with him yesterday that was interested in the company, and he's a really great guy. Did a ton of research on the company. He, like, believes in Aryval, and he's like, I will help you guys get customers, but it's not a strategic investment, right? It's not a strategic investor that will help us get across the chasm or evolve our product. At this point down the road, he might be able to, right? So anyways, yeah, a lot of it, and you're married to these people at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They gave you a lot of money, and you got to impress them and keep impressing them and keeping them happy. And you want people that are in the same wavelength as you, which makes it tremendously easier. You don't want somebody also always in your area telling you what to do. All three investors are hands off, but they always teach us through their previous experiences of what they've gone through. And that's super, super valuable to us.
That's awesome. How often, I don't know, since we're on the topic, but how
Yeah.
often do you end up like meeting with investors and stuff just to share that experience with maybe
Like,
someone?
the current investors that are with us.
Yeah.
Yep. So every weekend I write an update letter. I write an update letter to all the staff at Aryval, and not that we have a tremendous amount of staff, but and we are hiring right now. But but and I write a letter to the investors, and then I write a letter to the people that are involved in sales every weekend. That's what I do. So the investors are able to see what we're doing in regards to product evolution, things that happened over the previous week, photos of the team out and about, and then talking about market traction. So really hitting on all those important points. Do they read the emails every week? Probably not, but I know that they do look at them here and there, and they always send a really nice note. And I do the same thing with the staff, because our developers might not have the same exposure as the sales team. So from the investment point, every week. And then we do have a quarterly presentation with them every quarter, 3 to 4 months, depending on schedule. So we have Canadian investors, US investors. So we have 2 separate decks, one in Canadian and one in USD as well. But yeah, we do that. And, anytime that I run into a roadblock, or anybody on the team, they're always readily available to meet with them as well.
That is super impressive, Dan. That's such a great strategy to have in terms of transparency.
Yeah.
I've not heard of many folks like doing the weekly thing, but I think that that's really taking things to the next level. I think that probably
allows you. Sorry to interrupt. It allows you to slow down in a way. Like I would say, in anybody that's in the startup realm, every week is a new chapter in the company. Where at other companies, every month or every quarter is a new chapter. People have milestones that they need to achieve every quarter. We need to achieve certain milestones every day, and certain milestones we need to achieve every week to keep the momentum going, because you never want to lose the momentum, because once it's gone, it's gone. And that's the biggest fear in the startup world, I would say. But taking a step back on the weekend, there's no emails coming in, there's no text messages, there's no G chats coming in. My wife is still asleep. I'm able to go into the office and really just like write what happened, right? And I do take notes throughout the week sometimes of things that might slip through the cracks, but it's just something that we want to have documented. And then we have a thing called a pancake document that outlines everything that was accomplished in the last week and what we need to accomplish the following week. Or the upcoming week, sorry.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really important. And this is for anybody that is leading a team or running a company. Like you might get so deep into it that you forget to take that step back. And that's one thing that one of our investors has said. Like, I've told my other startups to take a step back, to kind of write things down maybe once every 2 weeks. And yeah, it's a good habit to get into as well, especially as a company continues to grow.
Oh, killer. That's like wild, awesome advice. Thanks for sharing that down. I think, and it's going to be a really cool thing to look back on one day when you guys are further down the road, to look at those updates and be like, oh, wow, great, like good success then, but like, look what we did now, like just to kind of, or different stresses, maybe something didn't go right that week necessarily.
We do always talk about that internally. It's like we had an issue with our communication vehicle for a little bit in September. And I was like, holy crap, remember we were freaking out that our demo wasn't working. And now this is the issue. Like looking back at it, it's like, that was such a small problem. And I think, once we grow, the communication vehicle issue that we've had, that won't be as big of a problem as whatever that next problem is that's going to result in another pivot in the company. But for sure.
That's awesome. What's been like the best week that you guys have had? And what's the success look like, if whatever you're able to share on that one?
Best week in the company?
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of weeks are great for certain reasons. And I know that's a cheesy answer. If you were to say like a particular week that was like one that we remember very well, and I wish we were able to have the whole team there for that week, was our first conference together. So we have our CTO, Andrea, who's based out of Montreal, Quebec, and then Annalie, who's based out of Manhattan, New York. And we were super stoked. This is the first conference we're going to. We couldn't afford a trade show booth, and we made it happen. Like, Anna Lee already had a room because Wes and I shared a room. And so we're like, Andrea, like, we'll pay for your flight, like, come down to Boston and we're all going to hang out. And that was really special, like meeting people first time in person that have been a part of this journey. And like at the start, we weren't able to afford to even pay a salary for Anna Lee, where we just gave her, a little bit of equity, but we knew she would be an asset to the company. Now she's a salaried employee and all that fun stuff. But that was really cool. And I think the first night, we went to this cool Latin restaurant. We all hung out. Jonathan his wife just had their second child, so he wasn't able to make it. And Andre just started at the company, which is one of our developers. And so, and we went to Harvard Square and just hung out there and told stories and how we all ended up in this place and how we're super stoked. And, the other night as well, we went and did some other fun things that were related to the conference. And I think the most memorable point from that trip was, as mentioned before, we weren't allowed, we didn't have the money to buy a trade show booth with that, which I think was like 7,500 US, which is pretty taxed for a startup.
Yeah.
But don't get me wrong, Canadian startups, there's a lot of great grant funding. You just need to find it. And there's a new grant that just opened up for this, and that's why we're super thankful for being a Canadian startup. But we were like, okay, let's do this. We know which hotels the people are staying at that are attending this conference. There's 1,600 people. They're our target audience. They're our admissions directors. So we made postcards where it was like, exclusive EMA raffle with a QR code that took them to our web to lead form. And then when they filled out that web to lead form, it allowed them to experience the platform, but also allowed them to get Aryval for free for one event type, as we charge per event type. And we started doing that. Anna Lee, Wes, and I started running through the floors and tossing cards under doors. And then Anna Lee was like, okay, I did this hotel. Wes and I went to another hotel. And we started sliding cards under the doors. And then we start getting messages that security is following us and is after us. And we're like, oh, that's not good. And then I get an email from the conference organizer. They're like, what are you doing? Like, this is illegal. Please meet us at the, they had this like headquarters section within the conference. So we go down there, we played the Canadian card, which was true. We're like, well, in Canada, this isn't a problem. Like, we didn't know that this was going to be a big issue. She's like, well, the hotel is unionized. They're going to go on strike. And now you guys might be the catalyst to the strike. And I'm like, oh, we're not going to be a catalyst to the strike because we put postcards under doors. She's like, well, now you have to pay for $3 per door that you put the cards under. So then we got fined and we had to pay the fine. And one of our investors reached out. He's like, I'll cover your fine. It's like, no, it's okay. It was a good learning lesson. It was still cheaper than having a trade show booth there. And, but it was still a super good experience. We got a lot of good leads out of it. A lot of people talked about it. We posted it on LinkedIn and kind of said, an expensive lesson learned in Boston, which you could check out. But super cool experience. And I would say that was like the coolest week so far. But again, I don't want to, there's other weeks I've been really great, but yeah.
I love that story. I'm so happy you shared that too. It's not the same industry by any means, but I know that there's a really good example of Barstool Sports who's not really well known until they actually got arrested with fake passes to get into behind the scenes and doing an interview or something, right?
Right.
The story, and it's like,
no, I don't.
Like low key, similar style, getting called for reprimand and then turning into a fine. Like, that sounds like a pretty okay situation at the end of the day.
And we did get to hang out with the EMA staff, the Enrollment Management Association staff, at one of the events later that night, and they're like, you guys are wild, but that was really, really clever. Like, good job, and like, we're like, oh, let's all take a photo. And one of them, like, I can't be around you guys right now. I don't want to get in trouble, but it's all been good since then. And we're looking forward to attending their next conference next year. But you just have to be scrappy. And if you do get in trouble, and the intention is never to get in trouble, but like, you do want to, make the most mileage out of it. Because you don't have tons of dollars to spend on advertising to make yourself known in the industry.
Yeah, and that's using that creativity to get in front of folks. That's awesome. I'm a
Yeah.
big fan of that stuff. Are there other things that you guys have tried that have been like creative that you could share with us for some insight for how you guys have had some success? And
Yeah, I think for our sales approach, we never intentionally sell. Like we've
yeah,
never like been like, hey, let me sell to you what Arrival is. And because, for sure it's our early stages. But anytime we reach out to people, we're initially the first intention is to really get their feedback because we know who our target audience is. We know who uses our product.
yeah,
And really telling them like, hey, like this isn't a sales call. Like really, we just want to get your feedback. And if it turns into a sale, great. If it turns into feedback that makes the product better, awesome. Right? Like it's beneficial either way we go.
yeah,
And and that's kind of been our approach, and it's gotten us a lot of traction in the market because we're listening. There's a lot of companies in the industry that we're in that just don't listen and just say like, this is what it is, enjoy it and use it. And they're like, but like, I'm the person that uses it day in, day out. Like, don't you want to know what my feedback is and like what I actually need for my process to make this better? And that's how we've approached it. And anytime we introduce a new feature that we got from feedback from those meetings, we tell that customer or that prospective customer. And if they want a specific feature that's a little bit more intricate, that requires a little bit more lift, we'll just say like, hey, will you sign on to be a customer if we achieve X, Y, and Z? And then they'll say, yeah, sure. Right. And then we set timelines in the contract and work towards achieving those objectives and introducing those product features. But I think that has allowed us to reach great revenue in the short little while that we've been around, and really plant a lot of seeds in the industry of like, hey, this company is actually out here to build something that we've all been missing for the longest time.
awesome. And this is the perfect segue from what you just said there too. But I'm curious to know, like, given that feedback and other things along the journey, obviously it's a product like evolution, and it's probably continually developing for you guys as you're
Yeah.
going out there. But what's been one of the biggest changes or like add-ins that you've made so far that's had a big impact?
Um, Foundationally inside the product, I guess there's two things. First was our pricing model was like, I would call it a micro pivot. I wouldn't call it a
Yeah.
pivot that completely changed how the company operated. But we used to charge per event. And we thought that was normal based on our previous experience. We worked with a lot of schools that had 5 or 6 events. So we're like, cool, we'll charge X amount of dollars per event. Yeah, that
Right.
didn't work. That was like when we were presenting, that was like a really big friction point in our presentation deck. And I always recommend to anybody that's starting to pitch customers, always have 2 people in the room that one person can watch the actual person that's being pitched to see what their reaction is at each slide to see what those friction points are. And we still have one friction slide in our system or in our pitch system, but we had a few more before. So that was one thing. So we changed to event type. So if you run an open house and you run a private tour, you could have 100 open houses and 1,000 private tours. It's still going to be the same price. So that was a micro pivot, which did require a bit more lift within the company of like onboarding customers and getting them all set up. The next piece was, and again, this is me, like, I wouldn't say I'm the master of the domain. I still don't know enough in the admissions world, but going into it and my co-founders as well, we knew the industry. So we were like, yeah, they don't need that feature or they don't need that function. Like maybe next year, right? Because we were trying to scale super quickly to be in market at the right time because we're in a seasonal business. And the biggest thing was control. So when you work with a lot of anchor schools, which we do, that have very well established teams, don't use marketing agencies because they just have it all in house.
Yeah.
And these are schools that send people to Harvard and some of the top tech people have gone to these schools as well. And we were just like, oh, they don't need to remove people from events. Oh, they don't really need to see if it was a hard or soft bounce. in regards to the communications being sent. They don't need to switch them from one event to another. Like, we'll do that. And come September of this year, like, it was like continuous emails, like endless, where we had sheets going with the customer of like who you need to remove, who you need to change. And now, our very talented CTO and our development team, including Andre, have been working towards introducing that control sooner than we expected to. So it's really tough to rebuild the system when you're live in the market. But the team has done a phenomenal job of that. And yeah, I would say that was like a really big change for us as of recently, and we're working through another change right now, which is our communication vehicle, which I've alluded to multiple times. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Awesome. No, I love the way you talk about your team and the evolution that you're going on. It just seems like, it's tough managing a virtual team nowadays. And it just seems like you guys are so dialed in with, common goal, mission behind that. And we haven't really even talked about it. I could just pick up that energy off of the way you're talking about how you guys are approaching this, and jumping into, troubleshooting different issues, or, making advancements in the product. So that is really awesome for me to hear. And, just your energy about it seems so great and positive. And where are a lot of the schools that you guys are working with? Where are they located wise, the location?
So our go-to-market approach was to go after anchor schools. So we weren't looking to get the most number of schools. We were looking to get schools that you can write a case study about, or mention in a meeting, and they're like, "Oh, you work with them, really? Okay." And that's so it's a much longer sales process, and we still had a very small window.
Yeah.
So we work with a number of schools in the San Francisco area, which are some of the bigger schools in that specific area. We work with a number of schools in Maryland, which is the most saturated market for private and independent schools, just due to the vicinity of Washington, D.C., and international baccalaureate schools around the world. So if families in the political realm, they move a lot, so they send their kids to an IB school because the curriculum is the same no matter where they are in the world, which is a pretty cool system. And then we have, schools here in Winnipeg that we work with, that we're very happy to work with. And then we have a few in BC, and then one in Alberta, which is one of the more technologically advanced schools, I would say. And we have a YouTube video about them, Strathcona Tweedsmuir School out in Okotoks, Alberta. But that was kind of our approach, was really to kind of leverage those larger schools. And then we have more scattered through the Midwest as well. And you could see some of those case study videos on our YouTube. But yeah, that's kind of what we wanted to do. And as we move into the next recruitment season, it's much easier for us to sell, where it's like, hey, we work with, Head Royce, which is one of the most, like they do everything first in this industry for the most part out in Oakland, California. And people are like, oh, like that's super rad. And if they're using it and they run so many events, like that means your product works, right? Because we have to always consider that we're introducing a new function into an existing process. And if that function doesn't work properly, that process is broken, and then they don't get enough enrollments. And then they have to let go of a teacher, or even worse, let go of the admissions team. And nobody, one of our investors says, you never get fired for hiring IBM. You get fired for hiring the new innovative company in the industry. So with us creating that trust within those other companies, and they're going to become advocates, allows us to close more schools in the following season.
That's awesome. And actually, the one that you just mentioned, Okotoks, I've actually been by there years ago. It's been around for a little bit. And I remember driving by there. Friends of mine at the time lived there. I used to go to Calgary for meetings, and I always add a couple extra days to go visit them. It's so funny you said that. I'm like, oh, I know where that is.
Yeah, it's such a cool school. Yeah, like one day when I have kids and I'm doing all right, and I can afford to send my kids to STS, that would be one of the schools for sure that I in Canada, especially, that I just love the outdoor approach. I've known the school for quite some time, and there's really great staff there. And yeah, it's on 220 acres. You go kayaking for gym class. Like, instead of playing kickball in your gym, you're
Yeah.
kayaking out in the wilderness in Alberta. Like, it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, I don't know if I knew that level of detail from driving by, but they had a huge property
Yeah.
near folks there. I've seen that, and that's
Yeah,
really
they
cool.
even lower their windows from kindergarten to grade 5, lower to the ground, that the kids could see out the window to see the mountains. So it's pretty impressive. The architecture is out of this world in that building.
Wow.
Yeah.
What crazy insight you have in terms of like school. That's so neat. Like outside of
Yeah.
what you're already doing, you have like this crazy, understanding of the industry and stuff like that, that most places are like, okay, the window height's going to be X all around the
Yeah.
building. Totally makes sense to have them at different heights because you're in like the dark, you're not getting in, that
Yeah.
natural
I mean,
light.
you have a great view past the cinder blocks. So yeah, you really want to
Yeah.
showcase it. Yeah.
Yeah, no
Yeah.
kidding.
I mean, we get to see some really beautiful schools. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
it's these schools, yeah, they're out of this world. I visited Mulgrave in Vancouver and West Van up in the mountains, or in the hills, I guess. And holy tamale, like, that is a very, very impressive school as well. So very impressive. Rock climbing wall in their gym. Pretty cool.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Um, yeah, I guess what's coming. So this school year is kind of like booked out, or like as far as that goes, and then your sales cycle with you guys will kind of go wrap around next year, and now you have like um, yeah, I guess proof as time keeps going on here. I think
Proof of
that's
concept. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, yeah, I guess more than a proof of concept, I guess. But yeah, like right now, the team is ramping up, and I mean, we don't stop selling. Like, the team sells 12 months out of the year, even if it's not the time of year to sell. It's just continuously continue with the market traction, and planting, that seed that we exist and this product does, is around. And whenever they're in that meeting with their team and they're like, what could we do to improve? It's like, oh, I had that meeting with Aryval 2 weeks ago, and it's a pretty cool product. So, but for sure, our seasonality of actually selling is coming up, where, the fiscal for these schools starts July 1. So you want to get you want to make sure that you're in their budgets for this upcoming school year. For sure, we start ramping up right now. We're going to revise our sales deck, and because the product has, significantly improved from what we've had in our previous pitch deck. So,
right, awesome. And then does the app have I guess everything that you guys are doing have the capability right now? It's focused Canada, US. Is it the goal to go outside of that?
yeah, I mean, there's been discussions. I mean, sure, our target market isn't as large as some startups. It's a very niche or niche, if you're on the other side of the border, type of product. Um, so we really want to make sure we do it right in North America before we jump into other markets, because a lot of schools have taken risks on us to use this product, and we want to make sure that this product is solid here before we introduce it to a new market. But absolutely, like, the United Kingdom would be a pretty easy transition, other than a few restrictions with data.
Yeah.
Australia as well, right? So, like, for us, it's also the customer service needs to be there. So, like, making sure that we have staff that can support our customers in those specific time zones, especially in Australia, because customer service is, an uber important thing for us. We say customer service is not a priority. As priorities change in a company, it's an absolute. It's woven in throughout the company. And that's something that's really lacking in the current industry that we're in. And we're trying to put our best foot forward for these customers.
When you mentioned that too, like how important have good relationships been on the like customer or client side of things when doing this, right? Because they're taking a bit of risk, and as you just mentioned, like customer service really important. But how often are you kind of keeping in touch with folks that have jumped on with you guys to keep that healthy?
Yeah. All the time, I would say. We have product updates that we roll out every week, so a launch. But I mean, launches don't happen at one specific date. They happen throughout the week. So, that's a touch point that we have with the customers. So anytime new features are rolled out, we kind of send, documentation. We also offer to have a call with them to take them through the new updates, especially if we have, larger kind of rollouts. That's for sure required for a meeting. Certain schools we meet with on a weekly basis, a part of their admission huddle that they have every week. So, us becoming more ingrained in the admissions department, hearing what their challenges are. We have one with a school every week, and it was today actually. And, today they're like, guess what? Everything's good. No issues, right? Because it is a startup. We do have challenges. I'm not going to hide that.
Yeah.
An email didn't go out or something happened, or maybe they misunderstood something, but 4 people on the team were just like, all good, super excited. And we're actually going to go visit them next week in person. But yeah, that's super valuable. And building off that last point too, actually, I mean, in person is so, so important. We're super passionate about learning about the schools that we work with, learning their internal processes, because really, we always tell the customer that we want to be more than just a vendor. Like, we want to be a partner with you. We want to be ingrained in your process and actually help you do your job better and make it easier, that you have more bandwidth to focus on other things. Right. So yeah, I would say all the time there's interactions.
That's awesome. I was kind of expecting that, because if you're sending out weekly updates on one part, I'm like curious how often are you chatting with the other side? And I think that's awesome. I'm a huge relationship person in the business side of things. It's almost got to be that way
Yeah.
with me first before we're kind of diving into any kind of business or conversation. I think that's great to hear that you guys are getting that in depth, to know that much about your potential client, customer, or partner. I guess probably really is how you view them, the folks on the other side of using the product that you guys have. So really awesome. Now, Dan, if someone is listening to this, and I think it's a great time, and I go down this path, is what's the best way to get in touch? Is it through the website or an email specifically?
Yeah. Always just head to our website. So Aryval, so ARYVAL.io. And there's a form at the bottom of our website. Feel free to add us on LinkedIn or follow us on LinkedIn and reach out through there. We also have a phone number that you can dial, which is 844-4-ARYVAL. And that's again, ARYVAL, since we created the word. So I want to make sure that comes through.
Awesome.
But yeah, that's the best way to reach us. And I mean, if this is a school that sees this, no, like, we're not expecting you to buy something. Like, if you have ideas that, you see that are missing in the space, that you
Yeah.
feel our tool can help, like, we're all ears. Our goal and our mantra is always, built by admissions people for admissions people. So always
Cool.
open ears to get your feedback on our system.
That's awesome. And we'll include those links below here in that information. So hopefully it's easy to find and discover you guys on the flip side.
Yeah, make
And
sure you like and subscribe, right? We always have to
yeah,
mention that, right?
I didn't know if you do that, but they should like and subscribe. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely subscribe if you've gotten this far in here, for sure.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yeah, 43 minutes and 59 seconds. Oh, 44 minutes. Yeah, no, for sure. That's awesome.
yeah. Dan, is there anything else you want to add in today, other than I was going to say thanks for making time again?
Yeah,
So
I mean, um, I think I could end it on this point for, if you've made it this far. Thanks for
yeah,
listening. I would say that if you're new to the startup world or planning to go into it, myself and the 2 other co-founders were both business founders. We are really good at sales. We're really good at building up the business. We had no technical background, and my like try to always bring in a technical person sooner than later. And we're fortunate enough to have a really talented CTO and a talented development team. But to also, to the point of, like, don't be worried to reach out to anybody. Like if someone says no or someone ignores you, then you just move on. You know, like I mentioned at the top of this call, or this interview,
Yeah.
we wouldn't have the investors that we have if we haven't reached out. And, you know, some of our investors, well, two of them aren't even in Canada. They're in Austin, Texas. I've never met them in person, but they believed in us and they're really great people and they believed in what we're doing and what we're approaching the market. And that's huge. And these two guys that we brought on from Texas, they know this industry. They've done it. They're going to be able to guide us and make sure that we reach that next level of growth. So just have confidence, go into it, reach out. You'll make sure keep putting the numbers in. So that's all I got.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks again, Dan, for making time to be on. I think that's great advice to finish off today's episode, and we'll chat more with you soon.
Awesome. See you later.